Good morning, everybody. Jeff Mason and a special guest, Ed Phillips, today, coming to you from the Simple Biz 360 podcast studio, Half Coast Studios in St. Louis, Missouri. Ed, welcome, and please tell us a little bit about yourself, if you could.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here, and I appreciate you having me on. I really enjoyed your podcast and the YouTube videos, so thanks for having me.
Well, thank
Hopefully
you.
It'll be of interest.
My pleasure.
I'm a young guy. I'm 68, so a young guy. I live in Dallas, actually in Arlington, Texas, and have lived here for quite a while. And I'm really grateful. I've been married for a long time, 47 years, and have 6 kids and 9 going on 11 grandkids. And have been in the business. I was in the business world, actually been in business for 42 years, longer than that, actually, probably 43 years. And have transitioned into various businesses and am now primarily a painter, like an artist painter. So easy transition, right, from being in business and sales and running a sales agency similar to yours to painting for a living, but that's what I do.
Mike, so, yeah. Well, thanks so much for that introduction. And we're gonna throughout the podcast give Ed an opportunity to give you his social media platforms and where you can find his paintings and stuff. But it's going to be a really great show today. So a couple things first. If you love the show and you have not subscribed yet, boy, we would love to have you subscribe. If you go to the lower right hand corner, if you're looking at us on YouTube, just hover over our icon there that takes you to the subscription on YouTube. You do have to be signed in. And if not, you want to listen to us, we're on 27 listening platforms. So everything you could think of from Apple, Stitcher, Spotify on down the line. And we're real excited. And we're coming to you from, as I said before, St. Louis and Half Coast Studios. They do a really good job. They've done a lot in the last month and a half to make this studio just really sound great. So we're real excited today. And Ed is a super special guest for me, and I'll tell you why. I met Ed probably in the year 2000, and Ed and I were in the public safety business. So we worked for manufacturers and companies. We had both worked for apparel manufacturers that made public safety uniforms back in 2000. And I met Ed at a conference, and I think the first time I saw him, he gave a high visibility apparel seminar, which was I'll never forget that. It was at the NAUMD show, I believe, and so it was really. And then I got to work with Ed for many years, and then when I formed my sales agency is when Ed kind of we worked together. We represented some of the same companies in that public safety space, and we really realized we had so much in common at the way we looked at business and the way we looked at servicing customers, and just there was just so much compatibility there that we struck up a good friendship, and we've stayed in touch with each other. We're both gentlemen that love the Lord and talk about that quite a bit. And Ed, you may want to see if you can turn the notifications off if you got them there.
Oh,
I don't know.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Hey, it happens, guys. We're live, right? We don't edit this out. This is live stuff. So Ed's coming to us from his home office there, and recently Ed has segued into just something so cool in this painting business. We're gonna just talk about that today, and we're gonna flush that up. But Ed, your life story is so fascinating. Mm-hmm. I would love for you to take the viewers and listeners down a path of when you were a young man. A lot of us live in the same town, in the same state, in the same country, and grow up there, and your life was much different. If you could just tell us a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, it was quite a bit different from most people's experiences, for sure. Just to give a start, I was born in Florida, and 3 months later, my parents packed everything up and moved to Texas. And that was just the beginning of a series. So I lived in San Antonio and 2 other cities in Texas. Then we moved to Ankara, Turkey, the country of Turkey, and the capital city there, and lived there for 4 years, in Massachusetts, then Michigan, then back to Massachusetts. Anyway, you get the idea. Yeah, I went to 10 schools in 12 years just to get through high school.
Wow.
And so very different in that sense. I really never had roots except for in Texas is where I would be the closest to saying I had roots, because that's where my mom was from. And my dad was a Floridian, but he loved Texas. He wished he'd been born in Texas.
Wow.
It's funny.
Okay.
Yeah. so this was always kind of all of our travels, we always kind of said when we were going home, we were coming to Texas. And then my parents retired here, and then I moved here in 1992. So this is really weird. I've lived in the same house for 25 years. And to give you a little perspective, when we moved into this house, my kids helped me count out. This was the 43rd house or apartment I lived in.
Wow. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? You know what? Yeah. You want to know something? I am one behind you. I'm in my 42nd.
Wow.
42nd.
You and I have more in common every day, right?
Yeah. I counted them up one day. I was like, holy smokes, let me put this together. 42 times I've moved, you know? And I mean, I don't remember some of them when I was a little tyke, but you know, it's,
right.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, it's just, yeah. So, but I've been in the same place same house for 16 years, same town pretty much for 20. Mm-hmm. So yeah, interesting. Well, very cool. Yeah. So now you've been here 25 years. How big was your family growing up? I mean, all this moving around, how many kids did you have in your family?
Yeah. So I had an older brother, a younger brother, and a baby sister. And one of the things that was an interesting dynamic in our family, my younger brother was almost exactly a year younger than me, but he was born with cerebral palsy and was pretty severely handicapped. And I just bring that up because that was an interesting dynamic in our family, added a dimension that was really interesting to me that still has an impact on me today. Because he was, like I say, pretty severely handicapped, but it was a great dynamic in our family and being able to take care of somebody from a worldly point of view. He didn't have anything to offer, right?
Yeah.
But his life was just as valuable as any other life. And it taught me a lot about serving in a different way, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that's a special calling that God gave on my parents. Back then, that was in the 50s, right? They were strongly encouraged, just put him in a home somewhere.
Yeah.
And they took care of him. So, but then when we started moving, it became too difficult to take care of him. And so they did have to find a way for him to be cared for. So when we did all of our travels, at some point, you know, we were not with my brother Bob, but that was a different dimension to our family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Interestingly, too, my third born has Down syndrome. So it's interesting how God calls families, I think, to some things that we never dreamed we'd be called to.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
an honor.
Yeah, you're dealing with that, and they deal with that much differently today. I mean, you know, the way we had a gentleman on who, you know, was autistic, and he's just really great kid, Jimmy Clare. He's just really learning how to do life, and you know, with his situation, but learning how to do life in a quality fashion. So he's spreading the news. So yeah, and much different than having the way we dealt with things in the 50s compared to the 80s and 90s.
For sure.
A whole world of difference. But we're very cool. So how many other brothers and sisters did you have growing up?
So one older brother and then a baby sister.
Okay.
So I was one of four.
One of four. Where was, out of all those places, I mean, where was your favorite place as a kid to live? Where'd you like the best?
Wow, that's it's kind of tough, but I would have to say Turkey.
Turkey,
the country of Turkey.
I thought you were going to say that. That. How did that influence you, if you don't mind me asking?
It was huge because, first of all, learning about a new culture, and we didn't live like on an American compound or something. We lived in the neighborhoods with Turks. So I made really good friends with the Turkish kids, and I learned a lot of the language. It's funny, I got to tell you a quick story. There was actually a restaurant run by a couple from Turkey that started here in Arlington probably 10 years ago. And 6 months after they opened, I was looking for good Turkish food, and it's so hard to find here in America because I've been disappointed more times than not. So anyway, we walked in there and I said, "Merhaba efendim, nasılsınız?" And they were blown away because I still knew some conversational Turkish, right? And they were shocked. They were like, what? But afterwards, what was funny is they said, "Your accent, it's so good."
Wow.
Isn't that hilarious? Because I learned it as a kid, right?
Yeah.
From other Turks. But really incredible experience to be able to really know another culture as close as you can without actually being a part of that culture. And my dad's job took him all over the country. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, we got to go on a lot of trips with him and saw parts of Turkey that most Turks never see, and just really got to know a lot about the country. And the history in Turkey is incredible. I don't know if you're aware of much of that history. Yeah,
biblically a center point.
Oh yeah, huge, and so much of the crossroads of history through what's called Asia Minor and Constantinople and all of that. But yeah, the biblical history is amazing because all 7 churches that are written in the Book of Revelation is there. Ephesus is there. So much of that. So it was really cool. We'd be driving along the countryside and just look off in the distance, and there's this big, huge Roman viaduct still standing. These ancient buildings and roads and all that. So it was really a great opportunity to learn history and appreciate history as well.
Absolutely.
As culture.
I mean, we literally just finished the 7 letters to the churches in Revelations a couple weeks ago in our sermon series. Oh, yeah. So you're speaking. Yeah, I mean, it's right on the tip of my tongue. So yeah, definitely.
All in modern day Turkey. That's cool.
So excellent. So I've never been to Turkey. I've been to a lot of different countries in the Far East and subcontinent, but never been there. And I understand, if I'm not mistaken, it's predominantly Muslim. Is that correct or not?
Oh, 99% Muslim.
Right. Okay. That's what I thought.
But very interestingly, the Turkish people, by the way, are so gracious. We just loved the graciousness, the friendliness, the warmness of the Turkish people. And they're the most, really until recent times, the most secularized Muslim country, predominantly Muslim country, and westernized, if you will. So Western dress, that's kind of changed in the last 10 years, but truly along those lines. So yeah, it's very different in that standpoint.
Yeah, I met, in the 90s, I placed apparel production in Turkey for Harley Davidson. I made clothing for them for many years. And we used Turkish resources, and they would come to New York City and meet with us. And everybody that we interacted with were just fabulous. I mean, they were caring, polite, nice, helpful, and good at what they do too. So, very cool. So did this creates, as a young man, you're kind of getting a more of a worldly view than other people as a young guy. You come back to the States. How did that experience kind of travel with you? How did that shape your youth and growing up in the United States, or did it shape it at all?
Oh, I think it definitely did. It opened my eyes without me even necessarily being aware of it to just how people live differently. Yeah. That, if I'd have just been born in Florida and lived there my entire life, I wouldn't have had that degree of that same experience, I guess, or perspective. And so I think it helped me to learn how to adjust all the moving anyway, just to adjust and be flexible. But also I'm so grateful. My mom and dad were great, because all those moves you can imagine. In fact, when we moved to Turkey, a couple of months into the school year, my brother came home and said, "Yeah, man, we hate Turkey." And my mom was quick to go like, "What? Yeah. What are you talking about?" Yeah. And he picked up from some other kids at school, "Oh yeah, we don't like Turkey." And she laid into it, not in an ugly way, but like, "Oh no, we love Turkey. It's one of the greatest places we could ever be," and just really hyped it up tremendously. So I appreciate that they gave us eyes to be able to enjoy, see the things to enjoy in those experiences. Yeah. But that really, and they were also respectful of a different culture, which I appreciate. Bingo. So that really helped me then to start to appreciate and, think about, that was back in the 60s. And so when we moved to Massachusetts, that was very, very different culturally. We didn't have the media that we have today that kind of evens all that out. There's regional differences, but back then, man, the cultures were so drastically different one from another. Oh, yeah. Even in our own country. So it just helped me to adjust and to try to value those differences in culture. Oh, yeah. It was, it was very... and flexibility. Yep. Learn to be flexible, man.
They were very definitively different. I married my bride's from Argentina, so we went back to Argentina in the mid '80s, and of course we didn't have back then. We didn't have internet back then and the communication tools we have today. So, you're sitting down with people in 1985, they're going, oh, wow, we're watching, Dallas and it's great. And they're telling us the storyline. We're like, wait, that happened like 4 years ago. Well, they're watching programming from 1981. They're listening to music that's already been popular. They're asking me, oh, what do you think of Yes, Fragile? I'm like, wow, Yes, Fragile. That's 1972, isn't it? I mean, and they're, you just realize today everybody's brought up to real time all across the globe. And so, what you experience, what I experienced even back then is to realize that, yeah, you really do have to immerse yourself in that culture, and it's not, things aren't compatible at that point. They became hand in glove, with the internet and everything. But yeah, so it's really interesting to get that perspective of what those cultures deem valuable to them. And one of the things, I don't know if I would love to know this about Turkey, but one of the things we found out about the South American nations, and it's particularly Argentina and Peru as well, because we have folks there, is the family is so vitally important. Seems like that nuclear, that extended family living after, letting the parents come back in. Just, it seemed like there was so much more glue to the family. Did you experience that in Turkey?
Yeah, I think that's true. And a lot of what's interesting, because when we moved there, Turkey, for the most part, outside of the cities, lived like in biblical times. Yeah. I mean, they still, they didn't have any machinery, didn't have cars or paved roads even, and that type of thing. And so there was, for us, there was two Turkeys. One that we really never had an audience in, right? In that rural, out there, much more different, but very close-knit family still. And then the city life, or the westernized. And so we had a lot of family friends that we got to see that part of it. And really appreciate it. I think exactly what you're saying. Very close-knit families.
Yeah.
And very respectful of families as well.
Did that rub off on you? I mean, do you think?
Oh yeah, I think, yeah, for sure. Okay. I know it did on my parents too. And they were already that way, but they still spoke of friends that they had that were Turks that included them into their family. Yeah. The Turks were really gracious to say, oh yeah, we're going to bring you into our family, so to speak. Yeah. As friends. So yeah, that's of great value, I think.
Yeah, cool.
And
very cool. Yeah, not everybody gets the opportunity to interact and interface with other cultures, and you and I have been able to. And yeah, it is.
Well, I'm grateful for that, for sure. Oh, yeah, I encourage anybody to do that if they have the opportunity, for sure.
I mean, I just in you saying that rural Turkey lived, much like in biblical times. I mean, here I am in 1996, and I fly in and stay in Dhaka, Bangladesh, but we go into the interior of Bangladesh, and I'll never forget seeing a brick making factory. And you look off into the distance, off the road, into some field, and you see them over there in this field making the bricks. Then you see like production station number 2. Now there's people crushing the bricks that were made. And then, production or, stage number 3 is what they're doing is they're laying the bricks along the side of the road as a shoulder. So now they're crushing it up in these little pieces, and then these other people go to lay it down, and you're looking at these people that live in 3-sided lean-to type structures. So it's a community of 75 families just always shares a common wall, and they have an open door, and you're looking at bricks being made that way. And here you are in 1996, and it really gives you a different perspective on the rest of the world. That wow, we are so fortunate. When you go back to terra firma in the USA, it's like wow, we are so blessed. And cursed in a way sometimes, I mean, it's like, we're blessed and like, well, wait a second, Big Brother's too much involved, but whatever, right. That's another podcast, So Ed, on the, you've been a corporate guy. You've worked for corporations. You've worked in retail. You've managed retail stores. You've worked on the wholesale side for corporations. But then you've blossomed into this successful entrepreneur. Were there entrepreneurs in your family that influenced you in that way at all?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because my grandfather, my dad's dad, who died 10 years before I was born, so I never got to know him, but he was very entrepreneurial. And of course, when I was a kid, it meant nothing to me. But as I grew older and I would go to my grandmother or other members of the family to hear stories about my grandfather, that was one of the things that was always interesting to me. And he, in fact, this is amazing. So he had 8 kids. Their eighth child was born in 1931. And in 1927, he secured the distributorship for General Electric appliances for all of South Florida.
Wow. Well, that's big. At that time, that's
huge.
Big. Yeah. That's like monumental.
And of course, that was just the beginning of individual families buying appliances. That really was not heard of. People had ice boxes or whatever, but they didn't have appliances. Wow. And so it was like a big, huge opportunity, but he was really into and being successful. Well, October 1929, the stock market crashed. It began the Great Depression, ended it. So that nobody was going to buy appliances. Wow. So he had to close that business down. But he did other things. Interestingly, he actually taught himself a lot. Like he bought a book on calculus and taught himself calculus so he could actually do some inventions. And one of the things he invented was a mechanical, all car door locks, that we have today, we just take for granted. Like we got a little fob and we do that. Well, he designed a mechanical method so when you unlocked one door, it would unlock all of them when you locked it. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
I've asked to see if I could get the designs that he had, but I didn't. So anyway, he was entrepreneurial. And then I had an uncle, my mom's sister's husband, who was really an interesting guy. He small town Texan, lived in the same area his entire life. He's 98 now, amazingly, still around. But he ran a meat locking plant where they would process livestock, deer. It's a big part of Texas deer hunting area.
Sure.
And when I say meat locker, I don't know if you know this, back in the 20s and the teens, there were a lot of big, huge facilities bought to freeze, and you would go rent a locker to put your frozen goods in there. So that's what that was originally.
I did not know that.
Interesting. Yeah. Turned it into a meat processing plant. But he was really interesting because he made that business very successful over a long period of time. He just built it, incrementally and just built it into a really great business. But along the way, he was trying all kinds of things, Jeff. It was so fun because when we'd go back to visit, one time he'd have chickens. Next time he'd have horses. Next time he'd have hogs. Next time he'd have wheat field. I mean, he was always trying something. Yeah. And years later, I was asking him about that. And he said, I pretty much either broke even or lost money on most of those, but I kept trying.
Kept trying, right? Look at that. Look at that fortitude, that tenacity. Yeah, that's gosh, is that not an important message too for us? I mean, I've failed at a couple startups, 2.5 actually, if I want to look at half, but I've definitely blown 2 of them. And you learn from those things, and you try, but you got to keep trying, and but that's so great. So at what time in your career did this entrepreneurial thought process start to germinate? I mean, where were you when you started saying, I think I may want to do something different?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question, because I started out my work life as a hippie.
No.
No. Yeah. In fact, this is a funny story. It's hilarious. My first date with my wife, we got tear gassed on the University of Maryland campus at a anti-war protest.
Oh my gosh!
So
yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
That's a sitcom in and of itself, right?
So you graduated high school in 1970, right? Is that right?
71.
71. Okay. So just to give the
71.
Listeners and viewers perspective,
right? Just give a little perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so I was very irresponsible, and I was pretty wild as a teen and early 20s, but I ended up in the Army right at the end of the Vietnam War. And that was honestly a really great thing for me, because I'm grateful I never went into combat or anything, but I ended up in the Army, and I had to learn discipline that I just didn't have, and character. And so that really was a key to me being able to really recognize how important the work. And my parents had taught me work ethic, but I didn't buy into it. But in the Army, if you don't, you go to jail.
It's pretty simple.
So it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from that, learning how to do things I hated doing, but forcing myself. So that kind of was a part of that, if you will, just growing in the character to realize, I can do things too much more than I think I can, than I thought I could.
Sure.
But what really got me motivated in running businesses and starting businesses was a friend of mine was involved in Amway.
Yes.
And he encouraged me to read a book, which I ended up doing, that was called Compassionate Capitalism, which was written by Rich DeVos, who's one of the co-founders of Amway. And it's a really interesting book because I always looked down on sales and businesses as exploitive and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, his perspective was very different. It really opened my eyes to the whole idea that businesses that are really successful are those who serve the best. That was a very different perspective for me to realize, wait a second. And you might not have the greatest motivation to do that. You might just be incredibly greedy while you're doing that, but you're not going to be very successful if you're just out to exploit your customers or your employees in the long run.
Yeah.
And that was his perspective. And that changed my view and saying, wow, that's an honorable thing to do, and a really good thing to do for the community, for the culture, and if I can benefit. So that really opened my eyes to thinking differently.
Yeah.
And then I had another friend, believe it or not, who was in insurance salesman. And that's where I really got the entrepreneurial the baptism, if you will, hardcore, man. Life insurance and health insurance sales.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it, but I learned a tremendous amount from doing that because I was an independent contractor.
Sure.
So it was all on me, right?
Sure.
To make it work and not work.
So what's your, so that kind is where you open your eyes to it. You get familiar with it. So when did you actually make the decision to leave an employee realm and go into and work in a 1099 realm or work as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, the first time was in 1987. So I left a contract retailer, which you and I know, in the uniform and equipment business. So I left that retailer and went to work as an independent contractor for manufacturers of uniforms and equipment and all. So that was in 1987. And I did fairly well with that until 1991. I did that and was successful. Learned a lot, man. I struggled a lot too through those years, but it was a great learning period for me. And I gained confidence too, realizing, well, I can do this. I actually can do it. So I stubbed my toe. I fell down, I don't know how many times through that whole period. Made lots of mistakes, but it was a really great time because I ended up going, well, I did make it work in the long run. But then I got a really great offer from another company, a corporation, to move to Texas to run a store down here. So that's how I ended up in Texas. And then I did that. And as you know, went to work in the wholesale side in management of an apparel company. And then in 2007, I left the employer relationship with that company and became an independent rep again in 2007. And so I've been doing that full time until about a year ago, and now doing just a little bit of that still as well. So
Yeah, so you've got quite a number of years under your belt as an entrepreneur, and I think a lot of people don't realize that sometimes. So your particular last business was, as mine is, my daytime job is running a sales agency like yours was that represents basically 6, 7, 8 companies in a dedicated geographic region, and we finance all of our own travel expenses, and we get paid a commission from each one of these companies for the sales that's generated in those areas. And a lot of people, have said to me over my lifespan, "Oh, that's not an entrepreneurial gig. You're just a rep." Well, when you set it up and you do it, I mean, you do set it up. It is running a small business, and I do present it that way. I know you did too, or you do, and you do learn a lot about how to interact. And one of the things I loved about it was interacting with all those different corporate cultures. And for me, what I found really fascinating was, I knew I was going to write a book in 1989. I made that dedicated decision, and everything from that point on was what I call a creative experience. So my mouth watered when I opened my sales agency, because I'm like, now I get to dip into 8, 9, 10, all these different companies and learn how did they do customer service? How did they do forecast and planning? How did they do inventory? How did they set up their warehouse or fulfillment center? How do they handle, issues? And it was really fascinating, and it still is, because you see all these different flavors of ice cream out there of what's going on. And so knowing you have a similar past, what encouragement or what message could you send? And I call them, there's 2 stages of entrepreneurs, I think, that are out there. There's the chin rubbers that are going, should I do this? Should I leave my job? Or I got furloughed, and, do I do this? Or then there's people that, I'm doing it. Ed, speak to me. What do you got? What kind of tip could you give somebody that's in the chin rubbing stage, or, hey, I'm doing this stage of entrepreneurship?
Well, quit rubbing your chin and go do something. Right? No, I understand. It's funny because actually my first real entrepreneurial thing, a friend of mine and I put some money together back in the 80s and bought some arcade video games. You remember the big, huge arcade video games?
Absolutely.
So we bought like 10 of those things. It was a lot of money because they cost about $2,500 a piece. And we placed them in pizza joints. And so we would take turns going around and collecting the money and splitting it with the proprietor. And so that was kind of the first venture into it. But I bring that up just because that was, honestly, it was like I thought about, okay, what am I going to do? And I had 3 kids at home at the time. So I was not in a position where I felt like I could just necessarily leave and do that. I didn't have enough money to do that. But it was a good place to start. So I guess I would say start somewhere, find something. You don't have to necessarily make that dive into just doing that. If you can, and you're rubbing your chin, man, I would say, do the research, really learn from others, find other people who have been successful in that field, and try to get time with them, and, make a list of questions and get answers to those things. But at the same time, man, there's just a place where you just got to jump into it, and it's scary. I mean, I remember doing that, feeling like, oh man, what am I doing here? But that's also a great motivation, right? Yeah. It's like,
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just gonna say, I knew it was all on me to make it or not in some ways, but I was also grateful I had lots of people who helped invest in me because I looked for help.
I'm so glad you touched on that, because I think that so many of us are fearful of, or we think we're being, I don't know, we're being nudgy and pushy by going and asking people. But for a short period of my life, I don't know where I read it, or somebody influenced me and said, you should really go ask these other professionals. I know where it was. It was in my Wall Street area sales territory. So I would sell senior executives. And one of my guys in the company I worked with said, man, take the time to ask these people, these men and women, for their advice to you as a young man. What kind of advice could they give you? And it wasn't entrepreneurial advice. It was just advice in general. And out of that, I really came up with be professionals, the 2 words I say, and I define professionalism the way I define it, but that was really the message. But, we overlook the ability to hey, we know this guy down the street is, started this company. We know this woman over here started this company, and ask them if they would spend a few minutes. And could I ask you a couple questions? I'm thinking about starting a company. Could you help me? And I mean, first of all, when you ask, they are more than willing to say yes.
99% of the time, yeah, that's like, for sure, I want to help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had one of our guests, Amy Hoff is Amy Hoff runs FitKit. She is she and Mark Lake date, which we know Mark Lake from Tommy Copper. And so at any rate, Amy Hoff said, she didn't want to get on Shark Tank. She didn't want to do this, but she wanted to ask a question. She wanted to see if she could sit down with one of the folks on Shark Tank and just pick their brain, if I remember the story correctly. And, the way she told it was, we live in this world where we don't, we think, I don't want to ask. I don't want to go out on a limb and ask. They'll probably say no. But she asked, and woman said yes, and I think they had lunch together or coffee or something. But, it's amazing that you can pick the brains of these neighbors, church members, friends, acquaintances, relatives, friends of relatives that we don't know. And they can really, and you said it goldenly, you had a lot of people you asked for help and they helped you. You can get a lot of help out there. You really can. Yeah. So I think that's great advice, and so important. And so now you're in another season of life. 6 kids, 9 grandkids, 11, soon to be 11 grandkids. You are, you have a talent, an aspiration, or something that has been in the closet for a long time. Tell us about that. How did this come about? How did the Ed Phillips of today come about?
Yeah, quite a transition, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's right.
So to go from running a sales agency to being a painter for a living.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is that I was given paint by numbers. My mom gave all us kids paint by numbers. I don't know if you ever did that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So you had a number, and each little paint color had a number on it, and you would do that. So I don't know how to turn some of these off.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We're not hearing anything, so it's good.
Oh, okay, good. So that was fun, and I enjoyed that. I think my brother and sister kind of enjoyed it, but I got frustrated with it because you had to stay within the lines, and it didn't look real enough for me. I wanted it to look better. And so I went to my mom and asked her, and she painted. Not a lot, but she did paint, and she was talented at painting. And so she showed me the basics, of how to make that actually different from doing the paint by the numbers. And that was probably when I was about 12 or 13. So I started painting, and I painted off and on. I was busy chasing guitars,
sure,
and girls, and other things.
Yeah.
But so off and on, I would paint, and then honestly, I painted all the way through my 20s, which was really great. But then, kid 1, kid 2, wife, having a job, just so many things. And the other thing about painting, especially oil painting, which is what I really like the most, you have to set all that up, and we had 6 kids at one point. There was just not enough room. Yeah. I had to take our eating table and set everything up and then tear it all down. It was just too much work.
Sure.
And, the time involved.
Sure.
So I didn't paint for probably 35 years.
Wow.
For those reasons.
On mothballs for 35 years.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I know. Well, it was one of those things where I would think every once in a while, I'd like to get back into painting, but, just the opportunity wasn't there, if you will. And then about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, my youngest had moved out. We had more space. And I thought, well, maybe I'll pull out a painting. And I actually had an old painting that I'd never finished. I'd started like 35 years ago.
No, seriously?
And never finished it. I still had it. We'd moved it all over the place, and I still had it partially painted.
Oh my goodness.
So I pulled that out thinking, I should finish that painting. And that really was such a great thing for me to realize how much I really enjoy it. I love doing it. And it really began me being able to do it really as a hobby again. But it was my wife who said, well, you should try to do this for a living. It's like, come on, no way. But then I gave it a little more thought, and she kept encouraging me. And so it led me to do a lot of research. Again, being able to go to other artists and ask questions and get their advice was very helpful for me. And it really made me realize that there is an opportunity for me to be able to make a living from doing art. And I went into it realizing that I was not going to do an instant success, right? It's like any business. So I was really grateful. I knew I had the business background helped me a lot, has helped me a lot, is helping me.
Sure.
With being able to build an art business, because it's a build, it's over a period of time. So that's quite a shift from running a sales agency or running stores to painting for a living. But some things are very similar. It's still product, right? It's still ultimately trying to give a service to people, just a very different service.
The mechanics, get the transfer over to this of doing business, but it's a different different element. Yeah. We started, Simple Biz 360 is, is my side venture. Again, 30-year goal, but the podcast and everything goes with it is a side venture. And I think we started pretty much the same time. Like I think we connected and I was like, what, you're painting? When did this come about? And I mean, I forgot you were also a musician. I mean, dude, you've packed a lot in your life, bud.
Had a lot of encouragement.
Yeah, that's great. But and the love for music, we've had a lot of commonality. But then so Ed, just to let the viewers and listeners know, so Ed kind of says, this is I started Ed Phillips Fine Arts, and here's my website. I got a little YouTube channel. Sure, take a look at this stuff. And I mean, I looked at it. I think one of the first things I saw was the ship painting, and I looked at the autumn rain, and I fell in love with that. I'm like, wow, I'm looking all around, and Ed, this is Ed, I'm still blown away by your talent. Thank you. And again, folks, I mean, I guess, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, like riding a bike, but 35 years on mothballs, you get the old arm limbered up, and you get the canvas, and you get the brush, and here you are. I mean, right back in the saddle, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it was surprisingly good. And honestly, because I'm painting pretty much all the time now, it's fun because I'm able to improve my skill, learn more things, try new things, and all that kind of stuff. So it's really been fun to do something that I really enjoyed, the creativity. And my hope through my artwork, this is one of the things I think that's really been great for me, is that I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be, whatever. I just hope it brings joy or enjoyment to people, and it's an encouragement somehow. And I don't say that as kind of a mission statement as much as that's been really good for me, because when I was younger, I probably would have been doing it to try to be famous.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
And so I guess having realistic expectations, and some of that just comes, I guess, with maturity or with age. But also, that's one of the things I appreciated of getting counsel from and advice from other artists. It's like, you can do really well without being, the most famous guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, all that to say that it's really been great for me now to actually hone my skill and improve my ability to paint. And I guess God gave me a natural talent for it. And I'm glad you enjoy it.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. And Ed, and let me tell you folks, this is really kind of where I want to, land for a couple minutes. And it's just so interesting to me because you said something that is very similar to what I'm doing. And again, I think I mean this wholeheartedly. I did not do what I did to get rich either. What I did, I knew that there's a chunk of 80% of the people. You've got, maybe 10% that end up failing and don't do business well. You've got 10% that become super wealthy, rich, famous, whatever, and they live. But 80% of us live in this huge chunk where we all
Right.
have to pay the bills. We all have to go to sleep at night. We want to get a good night's sleep. We want to live a healthy life. We want to focus on family and other interests. But there's a huge chunk of people there. And I'm saying, hey, 80% of that chunk, those people, folks, I am just here to pay some things forward. And if you get one thing from me, I count it a blessing. If I'm 1/10 of 1% as effective as Dale Carnegie, I'll consider it a victory. You know what I mean? I'm not in it to do, but I'm in it to pay it forward and serve. And it's part of my way. And I do mean this. It's part of my way to say, hey, did I try to do the right thing and be a person? Yes. But do I have any kind of legacy at all? Well, here it is. I'm leaving what I learned as a young man, 2 words, be professional. If I had anything that was written on my business gravestone when I'm done, it would be that guy was professional. That's what I would want. And so I'm trying to pay forward those things that make you hit the pillow at night better, make you sleep better, make you feel better, make you get a little more oomph out of your business, better return on investment. And you're doing the same thing. You're taking a passion you have, you are paying it forward, knowing that you're bringing joy to some folks, not all, but somebody may spread your joy and put it on their wall. Some people may listen to your time lapse YouTube videos. But however it is, what you've done and what I've realized in watching you grow in Ed Phillips Fine Arts is you are giving a gift to people. And that's really the way I looked at your Hawk video. And folks, I just want to explain what Ed does is get threefold. He's got artwork he sells, and we'll let you get into all that. He's got artwork he sells. He's got time-lapse videos that he does on YouTube, which are fantastic. It takes you into a painting process. Some of them are 8 minutes, some of them are 3 minutes, some of them are 1 minute, and it couples with beautiful serenading music. And Ed lets you see the process of painting a picture. And so I had, your 1 minute Hawk. The Hawk video just to me is like the it's like it speaks volumes for everything you do because the music's great and the process is great and you see this awesome Hawk painting at the end and this is a very pleasurable viewing experience in and amongst the world that is filled with all kinds of crazy viewing experiences out there from whatever, the news world to, crazies out there. But so it's really good. So tell us a little bit about, and then I want to get into a challenge you challenge yourself on. But tell us a little bit about how Ed Phillips can get painting and get videos into the hands and ears of other people.
Yeah. So my website is edphillipsfineart.com. And
one L.
That one L, but you can put 2 because I went ahead and got that domain too.
Beautiful. Okay.
Because it's hard to remember to put only 1 L in Phillips, right? So yeah, EDPHILIPS fineart.com.
Okay.
So you can go there, or you can find me on Instagram or Facebook, which is just Ed Phillips Artist, or on YouTube, which is Ed Phillips Artist as well. And if you go to my website, obviously I've got those linked, and they are fun. I love watching the time lapse from other artists as well. I do that because it is really fun. It's amazing to see a blank canvas or panel, and man, how all of a sudden it comes up. So, and I learned stuff from that too. So that's the best way to contact me, or you can email me. You can find my email address on the website too, or it's epart1234@gmail.com.
Okay. So those are all the ways to get a hold of you. And people can actually buy your paintings as prints. Is that correct?
Yeah. You can. I sell original. I do commissions. So people who come to me and say, hey, I want you to paint this, I do that, or just paint some originals, which I'll try to show you in a little bit, something I'm working on now. Or you can buy prints as well. And there's links on my website to where you can buy prints of these paintings that I've done as well.
Yeah, nice, excellent. Yeah, and folks, I have commissioned Mr. Phillips. You know, I've often said this podcast, I just want it to be a cup of coffee, and especially when we get into monologue shows, which are 8, 10, 12 minutes. Just sit down for a cup of coffee. It's done, it's over. And I've commissioned Ed to do I love a picture I found, and he's going to do a painting of it, and it's going to be one of the murals that hang up just like that Can Do sign back there.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and it's really going to be fun. But
it'll be fun.
So these are some great things. Now, if you go into his YouTube channel, he's got a playlist. So if you go to his playlist, which I don't know if you're not familiar with that, it's just he's got his videos categorized under certain spots. But he's got about 38 time-lapse videos, I believe it is, and you've got then you've got a really cool thing. Which tell us about the challenge you embarked on about 6 months ago.
Well, I had been looking for ways to kind of promote my art business, right? And at the same time challenge me. So I came up with the idea of actually painting a painting every day for 30 days consecutively, which sounds like, and for some artists that would not be a big challenge because of their style, which is fine. But I like detail and realism. So I knew going into that, man, that was going to be a big, huge challenge for me. So to actually start to finish, paint a painting every day, 30 days straight was a huge challenge.
Yeah.
But what was great, I also wanted to learn from that on doing different styles, different subjects a little bit, is to see what people were interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe out of that, I would say, the vast majority of people just want landscapes or still lifes or animals or whatever. What was really cool was it was all over the place, man. I mean, doing those 30 paintings in 30 days was a huge challenge, but it really taught me a lot about people like different things. Yeah. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I like painting different things, so it was great for me to come out of that.
It stretched you, in other words,
it stretched me big time because I wanted to try different techniques that I'd never really practiced very much before. Well, you'll get a kick out of this too because I really struggled. It forced me to have to also deal with the fact that I can be a real perfectionist. Too much so, right? And so I was like, oh man, I'm not really happy with this, but I gotta let it go. Because if I'm gonna do it, stick to this challenge, I gotta let it go.
Yeah.
Well, some of those paintings people like the best.
Yeah. How about that, right?
where I was like frustrated with it, like, and they were like, oh, that's my favorite. So, which is really cool how that turned out.
We can be our own hardest critics, right?
Yeah. Well, and also taught me that it's not always what I like. I mean, I need to stay within what I enjoy doing and my style. But hey, if I'm doing this to benefit others too, then it's what do they like, right?
Yeah.
It really matters. So that was really cool. Yeah. So I made it. Now I have to confess, there was one painting that took me a day and a half. I couldn't actually finish it in one whole day.
Wow. So. Interesting. Well, yeah. And I remember you just missed it by a hair. But hey, listen, it was phenomenal to watch it, and you put out like 7 days at a time, if I remember the feeds, and they were coming out, and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy is on task. By the way, that project was a can-do project. Flexible, willing, creative. Mr. Phillips took those ideas, made them happen. He did not say, I can't do it. He said, I can do it. So that's why I put that up there today for our podcast. Cool. I thought, this guy just lives it. And you always, even when I interacted with you in business, you just always, you always had that attitude, and it just always impressed me. But so very fun. So he's got a playlist up on YouTube, guys, that has this 30-day challenge, all of this up there, which you can go back and see, which is just fascinating to me. What is if you had to pick a favorite niche to paint, what would it be? Is it landscapes? Is it people? What is it?
Yeah, probably landscapes is my favorite. But I really do enjoy doing a variety. So still lifes, I mean, if you go to my website or the YouTube channel, you'll see it's like, I love doing florals and other still lifes, just a big variety, and animals. But probably if I picked one thing to paint, it would be landscapes. But I don't want to pick one thing to paint.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah,
you say that really quick. Yeah. And actually, this is interesting because I've tried doing portraiture, and I want to get good at it, but that's a area that I really struggle with. I've just never been happy with how those have turned out. I've destroyed all of them.
Have you really? Okay.
Yeah, just because it's like, but anyway, I say that because that's an area where I really would like to get good at, is doing portraits.
Yeah.
But it's a very different style of painting that I'm working on kind of as a sideline, if you will, to practice doing that. I try to work that into my schedule. So I'm going to get better at doing portraiture.
So right now, if I understand your modus operandi correctly, you basically work off a picture that you like, and then you replicate that picture. Is that correct in painting form?
Yeah, like a photograph or combination of photographs. A lot of my paintings were all actually combined. One of the things that's fun about painting is you can move things around anywhere you want to, right? You can change the color mat if you want. If I don't like the tree right where it is, I can move it over.
Okay.
So I've actually combined photographs and do rough sketches with that, or even do like Photoshop type of Photoshop thing as well.
Awesome.
So and a lot of my commissions people have sent me photos roughly of what they wanted, and then I've worked off of that.
Take the liberty to move. Okay. Yeah, one of my favorites is Autumn Rain. I just absolutely love it, and I love the winter.
That's great.
You got a couple. The winter scene is great, but the hawk. What's really interesting to me, of course, I tell these hawk stories, which I'm probably going to get 2 prints and have them give it to my grandsons, because I tell Squawk the Hawk stories, bedtime stories to my grandkids, and Squawkalina is the sister, and so this hawk is perfect to hang in their room, and it's just so vibrant when it's done, and it's just so detailed. And so again, another one of my favorites. But very cool stuff, guys. And then the other thing, Ed, and I said this to you at first, and when I said it, I went, I hope he didn't take that the wrong way. But I listened to some of Ed's time lapse videos, and if I listen to it at 10 at night, you can hear his voice on this podcast. It's an extremely listen-friendly voice you have. And when you are in your element and you deliver that time lapse and you combine it with this music, there's just this, my blood pressure, if I could measure it, just goes down, and you're like, this is just so peaceful. The music you select is just off the charts, peaceful, instrumental stuff. It's just great. And, it just, and your voice and your delivery and your demeanor, it's just, it's very calming, I have to say.
Well, thank you. That's great. I'm glad to hear that.
I don't know if you get that feedback from anybody else, but I'm like, I don't mean you put me to sleep. I'm just saying it's calming. It's very, and in today's go, do world, isn't that,
for sure.
Isn't that neat to take an escape with Ed Phillips and lower your blood pressure instantly? I mean, I don't know.
That's great.
Kind of the way I look at it. But
I mean, hey, if it helps you sleep, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, it's great stuff. But I passed it on to one of my customers last night, the Hawk, and they were like, "This is so cool." So, at any rate, just tell us a little bit about what motivates Ed Phillips to get up and get out of bed at age 68 versus when you were 58 doing what you're doing? What motivates you today?
Well, I think what motivates me, that's a really interesting question. I mean, every day I get up and I'm just grateful for all that God has given me. So I'm motivated, I guess, by my love for God and all that He has done for me, my family. I'm at a season of life which is really interesting. When my kids are grown, and most of them have babies already or babies on the way. And so being very into trying to support them appropriately is a big motivator for me as well. And then I think just trying to be more aware of how can I add something and serve, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in like this, look at me kind of thing, but just more and more as I've grown older, I realized, what can I do to really help and encourage people and give back? Like you say, I love what you're saying as far as pay it forward, but giving back. I've had so many people invest in me well. And I'm so grateful for that. And I feel like I'm more in a season where maybe I can give a lot more back in that sense.
Yeah. Well, and you have, you draw on your international experiences going through high school in 66 through 70, which is probably, or 67 through 71, which is probably one of the most, I don't know what word even to say, fascinating, interesting, intricate, weird times to ever be, 14 to 18 years old. I mean, if you had to pick 4 years, wow, there it is. Haight-Ashbury, the love movement, the Woodstock, the craziness, the Vietnam War, and, and then you transition through life and here you are today after going through, rock and roll and self-indulgent stuff, which, a lot of us did back then. Hello.
Oh, yeah.
All that stuff. And you come out, you get to know the Lord, you work for the man, you work for yourself. You discover a world you had on mothballs, rediscover a world you had on mothballs for 35 years, got a great family, growing family. And here you are today, and you want to make a difference. And you wanna take all that and what a valuable human experience to be able to serve others with, I think.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I often think of that scripture that says, "What do you have that wasn't given to you?" Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been given a lot, and I'm grateful for that. It's also almost in some ways that I can't give back enough. I don't mean that like I feel guilty or whatever, but I'm just grateful. Hey, any opportunity to do that, because so many have given to me, which is fun.
Yeah, well, it's just I appreciate
including you, my friend. I appreciate it. Oh, you have invested in me so many times.
Ed, you
grateful for that.
Yeah, once I got to know you, I'm like, wow. I mean, this guy is fascinating, and just and I know your love for God. I know your love for family. I know your value system is just rock solid, and we also share a bunch of common past elements that have, I'm sorry to say, but my alcoholism, my drug indulgence, those struggles lying for 10 years of my life, they shape you, they mold you. Those happen for a reason, because I can see the other side of the fence. I've turned the leaf over completely, and I know that side of the fence. I lived it, and I know this side of the fence. I'm living it, and I want to be somebody that's able to help like you and just help in any way I can. And that's what I'd want the twilight of my my career in life to be known for. So, I know you're there with me. So what, I just have to ask this, and maybe it's not fair because creators like yourself, it's not a fair question, but what's your favorite painting?
My favorite painting?
Yeah, that you've done.
Well, it might not be what you would think. So can I show you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Show me.
This might be
show me.
A little rough.
I'm going to guess the flowers. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe not.
Oh, this might surprise you. First, let me show you a few things. You talked about the 30 days paintings. If you want, I can show a few of those.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay. There we go.
Is that coming through?
Yeah, that's the wolf.
Yep. Wolf Moon, I called that. I don't know if it's in focus or not.
Yeah, beautiful, crisp.
So that shows you a few of those paintings, which I had to make them small to do them in a day.
That looks like
Oh
yeah, look at that.
Paintings I've ever done. That's what I'm working on right now.
Wow, that looks like Hawaii, man. That's what that looks like to me.
Yeah, it is for sure. So I'm about 2/3 of the way done with that.
Wow, how cool.
Yeah, and here's one, landscapes.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
So,
look at that. Oh, that's gorgeous, man. Little.
I like adding little details that you might not notice at first.
Yeah.
Like, see the deer in there?
Whereabouts?
Under the trees.
Oh, yes. Okay. Wow. Look at that. Yeah. Cool.
So you wouldn't notice. Just kind of subtle, right?
Yeah.
But here's my favorite.
Oh, look at that. Man.
And I don't know, is it focused or not?
Yeah, sure is. Yep.
Okay. So that represents my grandkids.
Wow.
Yeah, when I painted this, there were 5 grandkids, as you can tell.
Yeah.
And so the one running off in the distance there, each one of those balloons represents a new grandkid that's come along since.
That's sweet. And listeners, I'm really sorry you can't see this, but if you go to Ed's website, you can see this. But Ed's really just showing us a little bit of his artwork. We're inside his studio now and just kind of painting a picture for you and just to see where the magic happens. But yeah, Ed, that is just so cool. That is really cool.
So that's some emotional painting for me, obviously, and different in that regard because it represents my grandkids, which is why that's my favorite as well. But otherwise, probably I like either the zebra or the hawk. I really enjoyed doing those very much because I wasn't sure how they were going to turn out. Were they going to look like a comic book zebra or the real thing, right? And so I was really grateful how those turned out well.
Yeah, the hawk was great. Well, my favorite is Autumn Rain for sure. I just love it, and But that wow, thanks for sharing that, and you can kind of get an idea what Ed does, but he's got a lot of other stuff out there that you want to see. And again, Ed, if you could just just give your website and your call URLs out again, if you could.
Yeah, so my website is edphillipsfineart.com. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. It's Ed Phillips Artist, and that's where it is 1 L. So Ed Phillips, Phillips Artist.
Okay.
And then YouTube is the same thing. So it's Ed Phillips Artist. So.
Okay. Yeah. And folks, we're going to have, if you go on our YouTube channel to see this, if you're on YouTube and you go to our channel and you go to this show, if you look at the show description, underneath it is show more. And when you click on show more, we are going to have links, direct links right there on YouTube to Ed's website, to Ed's YouTube channel, so that you can connect with some of these social media platforms and go right to where Ed's at. So it's really exciting and to have you on and to share this, Ed. And
thank you so much.
Is there anything I forgot to ask you?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, it's been.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure. And we end every show with we ask for the person's lost in the shuffle rock and roll pick. And basically what that is, folks, if for those who don't know, you're just tuning in, it's just a song that became important to you. It's an old rock and roll tune that maybe didn't make mainstream radio. Maybe it did, but in many cases it's kind of tucked in the back. It's the 4th song on the album, whatever, and it meant something to you, and you share it, and then we put it up as a card in the upper right hand portion of our YouTube screen, and we share it. So Ed, you have a pick. Love it. Let us know what your pick is.
Yeah, it's a tune by small band The Beatles, right? So they had so many huge hits, but one of my favorites is called Two of Us. And when I listen to that song, it's one of those songs that I just picture so many times where I've had people in my life who I've kind of walked together with them, like you and I over the years. We've had walks together, and it's such a great song because it kind of just describes that, Two of Us. Yeah. And I really love the punchline, if you will, the hook in that song is "We're on our way home." Yeah. And that I really relate to that because we're on a journey, right? All of us are. And as a believer and as a Christian, and I know that I'm just on a journey through this life and through this world, and I'm going to go home one day. Yeah. And so it's really, it's a fun, to kind of a different style of songs.
Well, and I love it. I love to give perspective. So let me just lay some perspective here for everybody. So the British invasion starts in '64. The Beatles, Dave Clark 5, Jerry and the Pacemakers, all these guys, blossom up, but the Beatles kind of lead the pack. Dave Clark as well, right there. And '64. So you're in 7th grade or 6th grade when this happens. Mm-hmm. And so Ed goes to school 67 through 71. The Beatles are now hot and heavy, the biggest band going, the biggest influencers out there. They are it. Rolling Stones, The Who, the Beatles, and here the Beatles go on, and Ed's now a junior in high school, and in 1970, the Beatles put out their last album called Let It Be. Mm-hmm. And this song appears on that album, and it's actually the first track on the album. So a couple interesting things that came out of it. First of all, I did not know that Phil Spector produced that album, which if you look at Phil Spector, you know, he goes back to competing with Motown and has all this tumultuous final career, ends up killing, you know, executing his girlfriend, shoots her, and he goes to jail for X amount of years, and he ended up passing away last year. But, you know, talent that just went wrong. But he was the producer, I never knew. This song, Two of Us, was actually entitled On Our Way Home at first. It was actually designed to be a heavy guitar rock and roll song, and they revamped it at the end and said, you know what, let's make this an acoustic guitar song, if you will. It does appear as the first song on the album, so it's not tucked in the belly of the album. So it was the first song, and this I find very interesting. I guess it's more about, McCartney wrote it, and it's more about, they did not have Lennon write on this, I don't think, and he touches on the contract situations where they had some tumultuous, you know, things going on with their contracts, and you know, it ends up being the last album. But here's the most interesting part I thought of the whole research is that they recorded this. I believe it released in 1970. They recorded it January 31st, 1969, and they put this live version of the recording out to the Ed Sullivan Show. And for those of you who don't know Ed Sullivan Show, for those of us in 1970 and, you know, rewind to the mid-60s, I mean, 70 million people, I don't even know how many, would get near their TV on a Sunday night, and you would watch the Ed Sullivan Show. And it was our window into the world, if you will. It was our way to say, and this whole blossoming rock and roll genre was being introduced there, and Ed Sullivan would take this time. So at any rate, the Beatles and the Dave Clark Five kind of competed for the most appearances on Dave Clark Five. I actually think has more appearances on Ed Sullivan than the Beatles. But this film clip from the recording of Two of Us off of Let It Be from January 31st, 1969 was the last appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. So, so if you want to look at, you know, a history-making thing, but it's a very, very cool tune, folks. Put it up there, and you can see it. We have it up there as a card, Two of Us, the Beatles, 1969, Let It Be. And Ed is a can-do guy, and folks, we just encourage you, be flexible, say yes to customers, you know, try, be flexible, be willing, be creative. Let's be can-do companies and not can't-do. And Ed, I love you, brother. It's such a fascinating pleasure to have you on. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for opening up to us. And we wish you all the best, my friend.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been a joy. I love you too, brother.
All right. Take care, Ed. Thank you. Love you too, man. Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.